Some dare call it conspiracy.
Welcome to the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast, hosted by Brent and Neil Sanders. After nearly 20 years exploring the world of conspiracy culture, we are taking our guests and listeners on a guided tour of the rabbit hole. Our mission? To discover where the truth lies.
So, in the last exciting episode of the Razzle Stack, we established that Nick Fuentes and his bigotry is driven essentially by a need for attention, self-hatred, and his villain arc happened when he was rejected by his heroes and the only friends that he's ever really had, which was due to his complete lack of social skills and his self-loathing coming out. We also learned that Tucker Carlson is worried that he'll be sent irretrievably gay if he watches too much porn, and that Nick Fuentes, whilst yearning for a fascist society and a police state, identifies as the woman when he watches couples having sex. Anyway, so Nick Fuentes then went on Steven Crowder. Steven Crowder is another one of these right-wing twats. He's best known for his changed my mind bit, where he engages strangers in arguments and staunchly refuses to alter his opinions regardless of evidence or logic or reason. He basically comes pre-prepared and asks students things designed to rile them up, to mine content of him owning the libs. He'll have arguments where it's just a button pusher, and it's the sort of things where it requires a bit of an understanding because he's framing it in a certain way, and he'll basically just turn up, and he's a lot older than the people that he tends to sort of engage in these arguments, and most of the time he sort of wins by sort of, you know, tricking them into sort of logical traps and things like that. He's incredibly bad faith. That doesn't mean that he doesn't actually lose quite a lot of the time, because, you know, he's not that talented. But hey ho, he strongly supports things like mass deportation efforts, particularly the plans proposed by the 2025 Trump administration. He's dedicated multiple segments of his Change My Mind to arguing that deporting undocumented immigrants will save America and alleviate the crises in housing and the labour market, which is entirely untrue. He's also one of these guys that he wants to seal the border, and he was one of the people that was a very big advocate for building the border wall, which everyone seems to have completely forgotten about now. He also he does say that he has no problem with legal immigration, but what is considered legal is often very blurry in these arguments. This is also something that we hear, that like, oh, I don't mind them coming over here legally, but how can it be legal if they come over here in a boat or a dinghy? It's like, well, because they're claiming asylum. Like, and you don't know whether their status is legal or not until their asylum process has been gone through and vetted, essentially. He does talk about cultural invasions, though, quite a lot, which is, you know, a bit of a, shall we say, a tell. So it would be a bit weird, wouldn't it, if he was an immigrant twice, because he moved to Canada aged 3 and then he moved to America aged 18. So, you know, yeah. It's all very silly, isn't it? Do you know what he was doing at age 12?
No.
He was a voice actor, and he played the character Alan the Brain Powers on the children's TV series Arthur.
No way.
Yeah. He was also in the Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie film The Bone Collector as an actor, but he was an extra. But this is the thing, right? Okay, at 17, he became a stand-up comic. All of these people, if you look at them, when Candace Owens called Nick a theatre kid, there's a degree of accuracy to this. To all of these people, they've all tried, Candace herself, they've all tried various personas and personalities, and tried to get into the arts and the script writers. Ben Shapiro was a failed script writer. I think Dave Rubin was a failed stand-up comedian. Gavin McGuinness was a failed stand-up comedian. Stephen Crowder was a failed stand-up comedian. Milo Yiannopoulos tried to be a journalist, also sort of saw himself as an author and a personality. Same sort of thing. All of these people, they've tried certain things, they've failed at that, and they've decided that this is a way that they can work in the media. So from 2009 to 2012, he worked at Fox News until he knackered it all up because he was critical of Sean Hannity, which they don't really like. He was also involved in a fight with a union activist. He was at a protest as part of Americans for Prosperity, which is the Koch brothers think tank / slush fund, and he got repeatedly punched in the face. But it was deemed that the man who gave Crowder a posting was actually acting in self-defense, which is pretty embarrassing all round, to be quite honest. So he started Louder with Crowder, which is his show, and it was on a conservative network that merged with Glenn Beck's The Blaze, and he continued basically doing sort of right-wing edgelord material on YouTube. He has this thing where he dons makeup to perform. When I say makeup, it's blackface to perform as a black activist, and also he has a hilarious boorish Asian man caricature. Becca Lewis, who's a Stanford researcher who studies extremism on YouTube, said Crowder stays away from expressing white nationalism directly, but his channel has some of the most overt racism of any of the shows that I've looked at. In 2019, his channel was demonetized for cyberbullying and the use of homophobic slurs. It was reinstated in 2020, but then demonetized again the following year. And that was for spreading lies about the 2020 election and also mocking a 16-year-old girl who'd been killed by the police. So he's a class act all round. In October of 2021, he was suspended again after he uploaded a video discussing the story of a transgender woman who was serving time in a California women's prison who allegedly raped and impregnated a fellow inmate, a claim that has been debunked since as being completely untrue, completely unfounded. It's just a made-up incident. It didn't happen. And in 2023, his channel was suspended again when he had Alex Jones on the show, because at the time, Alex Jones was banned from all sort of social media. And they have a policy of you're not allowed to prop up people who are, also banned. That is seen as, it's a loophole that they won't put up with, basically. Now, despite being known as a sort of quite hardcore homophobe, can you believe that there's been rumors about Stephen Crowder being either secretly gay or being bisexual? So a lot of this comes from Candy Science, so you're going to take this with a huge picture. But Crowder himself did accidentally say in 2019, this was part of a sort of soul-searching sort of section that he was going through on his show. And part of this sort of rant that he went on said, I'm afraid, frankly, I used to have a bad temper. I'm afraid of it coming back. I'm afraid of Mr. Hyde rearing his ugly bisexual head. Well, that was only a short phase. And when he said this, lots of his chat, his followers and stuff, they sort of jumped in and expressed their own feeling of having shameful gay thoughts that they wanted to get rid of. And they were asking Crowder how he got over this phase. He's also got a bit of a penchant for always dressing up as a woman, which is a hilarious piece of comedy that is never not funny. But he also is known to grab the nuts of his co-workers and, in a hilarious method of owning the libs, sending them pictures of his own penis. In regards to exposing himself, this is one witness. In regards to exposing himself in general, to my knowledge, he only exposed himself to male staffers, but it happened all the time. It was a regular occurrence. It usually happened when he was in a sort of really good manic sort of mood. So while we were all disgusted by it, and while it was never welcomed, it was preferable to him being in a bad mood and how he treated people when he was in that state, a former staffer said. I've personally witnessed it on one occasion, another person said. My personal theory is that he's a man-child that just thinks that it's funny, like boys in middle school playing pranks on each other in the locker room. That to me seems to be his mentality. Could it be a power move? Possibly. He does virtually nothing that a grown man should do for himself. He doesn't know how to wash his own laundry. He doesn't know how to prepare his own food or buy his own groceries. Most of the time, someone else does all that for him. So he's like a child that needs to be taken care of. And his humour reflects that type of childish behaviour. A different and third ex-staffer said that Crowder would often make uncomfortable comments during a men's-only Bible study class that he held in 2021. The staffer said during this time, during the Bible study class, Crowder frequently remarked that men used to be more physically intimate with each other, and he would reference a passage from the Bible where Abraham's servant put his hand on Abraham's inner thigh to be closer to Abraham's descendants' balls. Multiple former staffers and a source close to Crowder also claimed that the Conservative firebrand would offer our staffers for prescription drugs like Klonopin, an anticonvulsant used to treat seizures and is also prescribed to treat anxiety, as well as frequently asking or handing out cannabis gummies or opiates like Percocets. Mediaite reviewed text exchanges between Crowder and former employees confirming these claims. Stephen was known for passing out prescription drugs fairly freely, one former employee alleged. When all of this came out, basically, he lied and said that he'd only done this as part of a skit, and that any evidence that he was, illegally asking for, using and distributing prescription drugs that were obviously, bought from dodgy sources, that was just part of this skit. He also famously ballsed up a $50 million contract with the Daily Wire. So he got this contract and he was doing his show. He was on YouTube and yada, yada, yada. But he was unhappy with details of the contract. And so rather than sort of hash this out with the people that were going to pay him a serious amount of money, he decided that the best business strategy was to throw a massive tantrum, record this, put this out independently on YouTube, and essentially call out his employers and shit all over certain elements of the contract, whilst not being entirely truthful about it, to be quite honest. He accused the Daily Wire of censoring him and being in cahoots with big tech to censor right-wingers, which is a bit ridiculous because it was employing him. It had given him a job. It also employs Candace Owens, Matt Walsh, and Ben Shapiro. So, what was the dealio? Well, it transpired that there was a clause that said if his YouTube channel was demonetized or has ads removed for breaking the TOCs, and you must remember he had a bit of a reputation for this, for pushing things and for getting demonetized, there would be a financial penalty. Basically, he's got on-target earnings, and a lot of those on-target earnings are predicated on the fact that he will be spreading advertising or making advertising revenue or having advertising time. And so if he does anything to jeopardize that by going outside of the parameters of what he's allowed to talk to on that particular platform, then rightfully so, they say, okay, well, you're not getting paid for that bit, or you're getting a degree of financial penalty. Exactly how much was never really clear, but I don't think it seemed particularly egregious. So what did they do? They simply cancelled his $50 million contract. And then the CEO of the Daily Wire, I believe it was the CEO, went and did an entire video which lasted over an hour, going through each bit of the clause, each bit of the contract to show what a massive petulant baby Stephen Crowder was. And
wow.
yeah, and I've watched the video, and it's simply that. It's basically, look, if you do anything where you knew you were going to cause a trouble, and you're sort of leveraging the controversy and the publicity of causing that trouble against the loss of revenue and from the advertising, then quite rightly you have to take that hit. I mean, this was the thing, and he's saying that he's being censored. It's like, you don't have to work for the company, and they felt the same too, and so just let him go, basically. Far-right media personalities, including the Daily Wire co-founder Ben Shapiro, really criticized him, and he said it was rather nasty to attack friends over his misinterpretation of a document that essentially offers you $50 million. Matt Walsh, who hosts the show on the Daily Wire, said the suggestion that the company's pundits are somehow muzzled or controlled is blatantly absurd. Whilst Candice Owens said that, and I quote, "That was a total bitch move." Even more embarrassingly and shameful, he was also caught on camera threatening his pregnant wife, who shortly afterwards divorced him. This was reported in The Independent. A newly released video purporting to show MAGA commentator Stephen Crowder yelling at his wife for failing to do her wifely duties and then threatening her to fucking watch it when she accused him of abuse is the latest detail in a messy intra-conservative media battle that has become increasingly personal in recent weeks. In the video, the man purported to be Crowder is sitting and smoking a cigar or a cigarette, whilst Hillary, who is 8 weeks pregnant, I think that's should be more than that. I think that should be months. But anyway, is standing there and asking to use the car to go grocery shopping. Crowder allegedly tells her that she can't because then he would be stuck at home and he would not be able to go to the gym. He then allegedly criticizes her for not doing her wifely duties and insists that she gives their dog medicine that she fears could be toxic for their unborn child if she absorbs it through her skin. So he said, "Why have you not given this dog medicine?" She said, I don't want to affect the baby. Can you not do it, please?" And he says, no. Hillary, who Ali says provided him with a Ring camera video after Crowder spoke publicly about their divorce, despite her allegedly asking him not to do so, appears emotionally distraught throughout the footage. She eventually tells the man that, "I love you, but your abuse is sick." And at that point is when he basically he points a finger at her and very angrily says, "Fucking watch it." And I believe he didn't let her have the car. I can't remember exactly how it played out, but it's just, it's just petty nonsense. Crowder responded on Twitter and he said, "Due to recent misleadingly edited leaks to the tabloid press without context," by the way, it was not edited, it was one continuous take of him basically being a dickhead to his wife for about 8 minutes straight. Without context and subject to consequences of the court, well, if not privacy, the next best option is truth. And so today I have filed a motion to officially unseal all files as they relate to the matter of legal record, finances, relevant medical records, including mental health history or evaluations, depositions, and any motions or sanctions from the courts of Texas. And then he did a video saying that it shouldn't be legal for his wife to be able to leave him or to divorce him. But did you see what he did? So what he did was he basically went on YouTube and subtly said, "If you go ahead with this divorce, I will find some dirt. I will leak your mental health records. I'll find something to make you look bad." Now, he hasn't done that, which leads me to believe that there was nothing to leak in the first place, because he certainly doesn't have any morals. He did this whole thing basically saying that he didn't believe that women should be allowed to divorce their husbands because he didn't want he didn't want to get divorced. She wanted to get divorced.
Charming.
He said, No, this was not my choice. My then wife decided that she didn't want to be married anymore. And in the state of Texas, that's completely permitted. She said his ex-wife simply wanted out, and the law says that that's how it works, which is just, again, not dissimilar to the attitude by Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson that essentially their wives are their property, their objects. You know, you've got to keep them happy and keep them looking nice, like a racehorse or, you know, a sort of dog that you take to Crufts. But you don't, for Christ's sake, treat them as a human being or in any way like an equal or a partner. That would be ludicrous. So anyway, Nick Fuentes is on Steven Crowder. And they want to get to the bottom of this because obviously there's some ideas that people have put out about Nick. Mostly Nick. He's put these ideas about. But you know, now he's looking like he might hit the big time. He's been on Tucker Carlson. He's going to go on Piers Morgan. He's fallen out with Tucker Carlson now, but you know what this is like. They all fall out and get back together and fall out and get back together. It's like fucking Fleetwood Mac on the fucking right wing. It's ridiculous. So anyway, Steven Crowder says, Nick, I think there's some misconceptions of you. I've heard this said. Can you clear the air? Nick Fuentes, do you hate all Jews, sir? And Nick Fuentes says, no, I don't. And Steven Crowder says, okay. So they've got to the bottom of that one. He then heavily probes again. Do you consider yourself an anti-Semite, a noted anti-Semite? To which Nicholas Fuentes answers, no. And Steven Crowder generally says, okay, that clears all that up then. So do you believe that white people are superior to all of the races on the planet? And Nick Fuentes says, no. And that's it. And that's how he decides to open the interview. That's the probing interview. And once that's been established that Nick is not an anti-Semite, doesn't hate all Jews, and he doesn't think that white people are superior to all other races, despite saying stuff that heavily implies, if not explicitly states such, a lot in the past. Steven Crowder, with his journalistic skills, has wheedled the answer no out of Nick Fuentes. So there you go. So anyway, they go on because this is just obviously outrageous. Stephen says that he's heard that there's a woman called Gillian Williams, and she's like, they don't like her on the right wing. She's got opinions, and she's accused Nick of saying that women want to be raped. And Steven Crowder said that that's ridiculous because he's looked absolutely everywhere on the internet and he can't find anything like that. And then he asks Nick, do you think that women should be raped as a matter of policy? It's like, that's unusual. Why would you add the as a matter of policy? And Nick says, no, he doesn't. And that's pretty much because, like, that's not the same thing. It's not the same thing at all. Saying that some women want to be raped or implying that there's a sexual fetish of rape through most women is not the same as saying that all women should be raped as a matter of policy. That it's very, very weaselly. But as you remember, like, it's impossible to find this. Steven Crowder couldn't find it. It's nowhere to be found. Now, if you just go in the chat, there's a link to it.
I'm not surprised why women don't support me. Women are irrational and sensitive. It's just like my whole life. Because I was always like the class clown. I was always like bullying women. And women have always been like simultaneously charmed, but also like, oh, stop it. Oh, you're so annoying. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. That's how women are with like with like my personality type, where you're like a rascal, you know, you're like a bastard. And they're kind of like, because I'm like a rule breaker and stuff.
He's a rebel.
Simultaneously are intrigued by that, but they also have to pretend like they're not, because women, it's sort of like how a lot of women want to be raped. And when I say raped, I mean like, that sounds bad when I say it like that. But there's like a lot of women that really want a guy to beat the shit out of them. But also they have to pretend, but part of it is they have to pretend like they don't.
He's such a bad boy, isn't he? If only someone could tame him. So he definitely did say that. Anyway, he also said that he doesn't want a police state, despite saying very much that he wanted a police state only a few days ago on the Tucker Carlson show, which we covered on the previous episode. Now, the most important thing, if you remember the thing that caused the biggest stir, other than all that weirdness about they were worried about watching porn in case it sent them both gay and trans, Crowder asked him to clarify his stance on Stalin. Because if you remember, Nick had come, well, you know, if you'll pardon the phrase, quite out of left field with his support for Stalin, and which obviously goes against his usual sort of more right-wing positioning. And he clarifies that he admired him because he industrialized the country. He doesn't seem to realize that he did this rather badly, and you know, it essentially caused the Holodomor. But he says he dragged Russia into the 20th century. Also, what was interesting was, in the interim, he had the same argument on his super chats. And he ended up calling his own fans stupid chuds for just liking Hitler. Because, and I quote, he likes winners, which is why he liked Stalin. When asked about which of Stalin's methods he should use on should the USA use, he says none. But and this is really, really weird, right? Okay, because like we're skipping slightly into the future, because as I said, they're all feasting off each other. This fucking racking of twats, like. Stephen Crowder goes on Piers Morgan, and he spends an inordinate amount of time shouting at Piers Morgan, saying that I really held Nick's feet to the fire. Why didn't you probe Nick about his love for a murderous dictator? And Piers says, what's the point? If he's a fan of Stalin, he's an idiot. I don't want to know the details, which is fair, to be quite honest. And it's pathetic. It's really pathetic by Stephen Crowder, because he's basically trying to say, I'm the hardcore interviewer. But if we look at what he said, he basically nothing. It's like, so why did you like Stalin? Oh, well, I like him because of this, and because he's cool, and because he's a dictator, and because he won, and because blah, 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 blah. None of which is completely accurate. But Stephen Crowder essentially went like, oh, okay, I'll get that. I'll see that. Yeah, he's an interesting historical figure. Fair enough. And then goes on Piers Morgan and claims that, like, you know, I basically pulled his fingernails out with pliers. Like, that's bollocks, utter bollocks. All of these people are just pathetic. They're absolutely pathetic. But so this was what the pushback that he got from his own fans, because some of them are starting to notice that he doesn't really have any principles. He just wants attention. Now, this is a strange position to be arguing for, because I'll be honest, I don't think any of these people are right. But let's see the sides of the argument. The argument said, Nick, you don't find Hitler interesting, you're a loser. Wow, that's pretty damning. But not of him. No death penalty, scared like a pussy around people with guns. What the fuck happened, Nick? Am I watching the same guy? Major L and Aura Loss. So Nick Fuentes' fans are criticizing him because he doesn't like guns. He doesn't believe in the death penalty as strongly as some of them do. And he mentioned that he likes Stalin more than Hitler. So it's a strange position to be in, isn't it? So Nick replied, okay, so you're just like a stupid chud because I found Stalin way more interesting than Hitler, far more interesting. And you want to know why? Because Stalin fucking won. That's the difference. I like winners. And you know, Hitler was based. We all know that. We all know Hitler was based, but Stalin won. And Stalin ruled for 25 years. And that's awesome. You know what's a little more awesome? In the end, Stalin might have been killed by the Jews before he really won. But nevertheless, he won. He didn't. He died of a stroke. I don't know what you're saying there. Anyway, and he created the empire. It was a communist empire. It was anti-Christian. It is what it is. But he fucking won, and he got the bomb. No, he didn't. No, he didn't get the bomb at all. Anyway, and then he terrorized the planet for half a century. Well, he didn't. He really only terrorized Russia and its neighbors and a lot of paranoid people in America. Anyway, so yeah, I find him to be a fascinating figure. Hitler's very basic. Hitler is a very basic edgelord. Like, oh, I'm an edgelord. I like Hitler. You know, it's easy to stan Hitler. It's easy to stan Hitler. It's actually courageous to support Stalin. Every basic bitch edgelord can love Hitler. Yeah, I mean, I like the Seven Nation Army edits. I love that shit. And I like Downfall. I like all that stuff. Downfall's the film about Hitler where he dies in the bunker. I'm not sure he does actually know a huge thing about Hitler outside of memes.
He probably only knows Downfall from all the memes.
Yeah. The angry bit. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. Like, when they say, like, things to admire about Hitler, well, I'm a huge fan of the Seven Nation Army edits.
Right.
Fuck. Yeah. To be fair, I have just remembered that David Irving, when asked what he admired about Hitler, he said the Seven Nation Army edits as well, I believe, unless I've got that quite wrong. Like, anyway, so I love that shit and I like Downfall and all that stuff. But are you courageous enough to actually stand the real goat, the real main character, Joseph Stalin? I don't think so. I don't think you guys have it in you. You're too fucking basic. You're like some stupid ass basic chud. You probably watch sports on TV. Spiraling out. And then hilariously he said, yeah, so I don't know what to tell you. You're wrong. And I'm scared like a pussy on people with guns. Bro, I am the fucking danger. Okay. So yeah, Nicholas Fuentes, not one to be trifled with. Also, and this was rather embarrassing. Around this same time, something was reported about Nick by the New York Post. It turns out that somebody has been paying to massively inflate the size of Nick's audience with bots. And ironically, these are foreign bots, mostly from Nigeria and India. That's right.
Oh.
Nick Fuentes has got H1B bots. Tragic. The New York Post reported that Nick had been inflating his audience with foreign bots. Research from late 2025 indicates that a significant portion of Nick Fuentes' online audience is composed of foreign bots from Nigeria and also from India. According to the December 2025 report by the National Contagion Research Institute, the NCRI, Fuentes' rapid rise in digital visibility has been heavily propped up by low-cost engagement farms located in non-Western nations. Nick Fuentes turns out to matter a lot less than his promoters and detractors have been assuming. His rapid rise is built on foreign bots, not any genuine American fan base. Shit, he's done a digital great replacement on his audience. The online extremism and tracking National Contagion Research Institute's bombshell report shows that the Holocaust-denying, self-proclaimed racist surge in national visibility was driven in engagement from accounts located outside the United States, mainly in India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Malaysia, and Indonesia. all of which has made an obscure fringe figure seem a much bigger deal than he really is. And so seemingly worth a warm welcome by podcaster Tucker Carlson and a less warm sit down with Piers Morgan. That is, Fuentes does have real followers, but a lot fewer than it seemed. His sudden rise in popularity is phony, although the fakery might pay off enough in publicity, and this will allow him to gain fresh fans. So the key findings on the foreign bot activity. The engagement with Fuentes' most viral posts is heavily concentrated in India, Nigeria, Pakistan, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Analysts noted there is no organic explanation for a white nationalist influencer to have such a dense following in these specific regions. A sample analysis of 20 recent posts found that 61% of retweets within the first 30 minutes of posting came from accounts showing behavior highly suggestive of automation. Approximately 92% of repeat early retweeters for Fuentes' account are anonymous profiles from non-Western countries that appear to serve the single purpose of boosting Nick Fuentes' content. These bots use swarm tactics, rapidly liking and retweeting posts immediately after they're published to trick the platform algorithms into promoting the content to legitimate American users. So, Nick Fuentes is, and this will explain why he's so eager to sort of, drop all his more outrageous rhetoric in order to soften his image when he gets on something like a Tucker Carlson, because he realizes that, really, I haven't actually got the engagement that it seems like. I mean, we've already talked about how echo chambers, particularly in places like Twitter, can make these opinions and ideas seem far more prevalent than they actually are in, how shall we put this, normal society. But it's all a con. It's all a con. This is why, again, all these people go on each other's shows and take the shit of each other and work with people that they actively hate, because it's all about attention. It's all about attention and clicks and driving people towards your wittering content, because that makes them money, which is tragic. So anyway, in the interview with Stephen Crowder, Nick says that he doesn't believe, like Candace Owens and Ian Carroll have been saying, that the Jews killed Charlie Kirk. And this is met with scorn by Milo, who is now basically friends with Candace again and Ian Carroll. And so this was said. Stephen Crowder said, "Do you believe that the Jews killed Charlie Kirk? That's one of the conspiracies out there right now. What's your position on all that?" So what happened was Ian Carroll had put out a video, and Milo had retweeted this video because he hates Nick at the minute. It's getting so ridiculous between him and Nick that people have started to speculate that they may have actually, had a thing and fallen out, because there's a huge amount of spite and cattiness in this that seems disproportionate, to be quite honest. So anyway, Milo tweets out this Ian Carroll video, and it shows a clip of Stephen Crowder saying, "Do you think that the Jews killed Charlie Kirk?" And Nick saying, "I don't believe that. As it stands right now, it was Tyler Robinson." So Ian Carroll says, and Ian Carroll is the man with the sort of the walrus mustache, and he sort of angles his head as if he's sort of trying to, he's got this sort of look and this manner as if he's trying to sort of like convince you to lend him some money, or to like, God, give us a toke on that joint. Do you know, he's got that sort of like leaning.
Let me borrow your phone.
Yeah. He's got that look. He always looks like he's trying to ask politely to borrow something off of you. Anywho, he says, "Yeah, Nick, pay attention. You think a 30-06, which is a type of bullet, hit a neck vertebrae, turned at a 90-degree angle, and then continued at full velocity and shattered a bunch of neck vertebrae below it, and possibly went down to his heart and stopped his heart? You think they just paved over the crime scene 2 days later on a Sunday by happenstance? You think there was a bunch of fallen military planes on the ground that day doing weird flight stuff just by chance. You think Charlie Kirk literally tweeting to his Jewish and Zionist donors that he needs to leave the pro-Israel cause is not relevant, and that him texting to his friends the day before this happened that he was afraid that they were going to kill him is not relevant. That Bibi Netanyahu offering him an enormous sum of money that he turned down is not relevant. Like, you're supposed to be our guy, bro. This is your moment. This is your moment on so many levels, dude. Where are you? You're on Steven Crowder disavowing the people that are actually out here taking on Israel, taking on the deep state, taking on the whole thing. And you're over here with Crowder. And so this is the main criticism. Everyone's a bit sort of freaked out by Nick having a golden opportunity to shit all over Israel and to join in the lunacy that Candace Owens and Ian Carroll are spreading. And he's decided to go, no, I just don't agree with that. And it's got him backlash, not only from people like Ian Carroll, but also from his fans. And we'll come on to why he's doing it into a minute. So Ian Carroll continues. And to be clear, I'm not saying that Nick is the same as Rabbi Shmuley. Okay, I'm just saying, how are you winding up at the same conclusion as all these guys? With all that you know, and with all that you've called out, with your deep understanding of how Jewish donors control things, with your deep understanding of the history of Mossad and the CIA, you don't even think that there's a possibility, not even a chance. Now, I know that you've got beef with Candace in that you just don't like Candace. And I know that Candace has beef with you. It is like it is. I know it's a lot for her to be doing really well right now on her podcast, but what's going on here is what's going on. So what is going on, Nick? If you were murdered, I would not stop until I figured out who the fuck did it. And I don't even know you. But if you are murdered today, especially if it was suspicious that you're Jewish Zionist donors, which I don't know if you have, but if the situation reversed and you had been murdered, I would not stop investigating until we figured it out. The issue is the exact example why you point specifically that it's not just is the Israeli government, it's also American Zionists, American Jewish Zionists, and this network they built inside of America on behalf of this foreign state. Because what exactly is TPUSA? If there is any moment in time when America is a direct, obvious example of what you have been championing over the years, it's right now with Turning Point USA. And so the long and short of it is, they all want Nick to say that Turning Point USA has allowed Israel to murder Charlie Kirk because Charlie Kirk was thinking maybe about not fully supporting Israel as loudly as he had been doing throughout the years, which doesn't really make any sense, to be quite honest. But that's what they're going with. That's their story, and they're sticking with it. And it's a bit pathetic, really, because Candace Owens and Ian Carroll are basically, they've got this idea in their head, and the basic string of evidence is that the bullet that they say was used should have caused far more damage. Basically, they've been arguing with gun experts and hunters and gun nuts and ammo manufacturers and all sorts of different people on Twitter, claiming that this bullet of 30-06 should have exploded Kirk's head, or at the very least left a huge exit wound. And they keep citing various videos. People keep getting these ballistic gel things, you know, with skulls inside and whatnot, like they do on like Mythbusters and what was that other one? American Warrior, or what was it? Deadliest Warrior, stuff like that, and Forged in Fire and all that shit. And because they've been using those, they're like, it shows that a significant amount of damage, more amount of damage would be caused. He also keeps using this phrase, 1,000-yard gun, to describe the rifle found, but supposedly having been used by Tyler Robinson, which is roundly mocked by gun enthusiasts on Twitter as it's a completely meaningless and made-up phrase. But he keeps repeating it as if it means something. So why is so anyway, the long and short of it is that the misfit patriot comes back, and he says, look, I've debunked this shit dozens of times, so go back and look at my other posts if you want. But the bottom line is that any real shooter, especially a hunter, knows that ballistic gel does not reflect what happens to an actual living, breathing thing. Bodies don't explode. Heads don't pop off. Bullets do wild shit. What you're doing isn't evidence. This is confirmation bias. Here is a photo of a round I pulled out of a hog's spine because, contrary to this arslur's opinion, bone does in fact stop bullets. And he shows that basically in this picture, this guy shows a 30-06 bullet that he'd used to kill a wild boar. And the bullet is pretty sort of intact, to be quite honest, but it didn't cause a seemingly huge wound. It did kill the animal, but this is what he's saying. There's loads of variables, and just because of the size of the bullet, it doesn't mean that it would necessarily cause the damage that they thought. There's loads of variables, like the gun might have been faulty, the bullets might have been faulty, there might have been a dirty gun, and the action might not have been very good. The sight might have been defective. There's so many things that could have come into play to sort of alter the wound. But essentially, this is the main piece of evidence that they'd think to support that there's something not right about the official story with Charlie Kirk. Now, confusion was caused by statements from the surgeon who saw Kirk's body, or it wasn't really the surgeon. It was comments from the surgeon that were relayed through a man called Andrew Colvett, who is pretty high up within Turning Point USA. And so because of this, Andrew Colvett has been brought into the conspiracy theory, and Candace Owens has actually actively accused him of being part of the conspiracy to murder Charlie Kirk. The executive producer of the Charlie Kirk show claimed that the doctor informed of a miracle that occurred during the Turning Point USA's co-founder's final moments. The 31-year-old father of two was fatally shot while speaking at an event for the conservative student organization at Utah Valley University on September the 10th. Talking to Twitter, Andrew Colvett claimed his former boss spared the lives of those standing behind him after he took a bullet to the neck. The tweet said, "I want to address some of the discussion about the lack of an exit wound with Charlie. I'm usually not interested in delving into most of this kind of online chatter, and I apologize. This is somewhat graphic, but in this case, the fact that there wasn't an exit wound is probably another miracle, and I just wanted people to know." He said, or he continued, "I spoke with the surgeon who worked on Charlie in the hospital, and he claimed that the doctor said, the bullet absolutely should have gone through, which is very, very normal for a high-powered, high-velocity round. I've seen wounds from this caliber many times, and they always just go through everything. This would have taken down a moose or two, an elk, etc." The executive producer of the Charlie Kirk show explained that he mentioned to the doctor that there were dozens of people standing behind the tent, to which the surgeon is alleged to have replied, "It was an absolute miracle that someone else didn't get killed. His bone was so healthy and the density was so impressive that he was like a man of steel. It should have just gone through, and it likely would have killed those standing behind him too." And then Culver added, "But it didn't go through. Charlie's body stopped it," before concluding, "In the end, the coroner did find the bullet just beneath the skin. Even in death, Charlie managed to save the lives of those around him. Miraculous." Now, no, that's not only in very poor taste, like, but that's really shitty, isn't it? Like, hey ho.
Words escape me.
Isn't it? It's just so like grasping and just like opportunistic, and Like, your friends died. I get that you're kind of trying to sort of give him a compliment, but it's a very weird compliment. And it's also, again, it just don't. Anyway, so you remember that Ian Carroll said that, like, he thought it was weird that the site was paved over, and he implied that this happened like with almost immediately, and that therefore that they were probably covering up evidence, because as you must understand, they don't think that the official story is true, so they think that basically by covering it up, there's somehow going to be, I don't know, evidence of other sort of bullet holes or something like that.
A bit like the 9/11 kind of conspiracy theories, or they took away all the metal before we could do any investigation.
Yeah, pretty much exactly that. And so I had a look at this. I was like, well, was it actually paved over? And actually, it was paved over. And so you go, all right, that's a little bit unusual. Why would you do that? And so apparently, the site at the Utah Valley University was physically altered. 5 days after the death of Charlie Kirk, the grass area that was, I believe, in front of the podium, or maybe even where the podium was on, actually, it was removed. All the grass was removed, and it was paved over, and asphalt concreted over. Brick pavers, it's described as what that means. Got no idea. But reports indicate that it might have started, the work on this might have started as early as 5 days after the incident, so on the 15th of September. But what they said was that basically the university said that they'd been thinking about altering it as part of their campus's beautification anyway, and also they wanted to transform the place to sort of help the students cope with the trauma of the event by, if you physically alter it, it doesn't have the same sort of resonance because you're not looking at exactly the same thing. Also, officials of the facility reports found the changes. The rapid modification of the site did spark widespread social media speculation and cover up conspiracy theories. But the FBI director, now this is where it all sort of tends to fall to bits, because it's reliant on the FBI director, Dirty Cash Patel. And he's a prat. The man is an absolute fuck up. But he said, and the officials in charge of the investigation said that all the necessary evidence had actually been collected within the 5 days period. And like in that period, it had been a crime scene. They'd done everything they needed to. It then wasn't a crime scene anymore, because there's only so long you can keep something a crime scene. It was all photographed. Every area of it was searched, etc., etc., etc. And also, Tyler Robinson was apprehended within 33 hours. So 5 days is actually a lot longer than the investigation took to apprehend the suspect. So it's difficult to say with that. Like, it doesn't appear that there's anything nefarious, but it doesn't help the case. Because of the fact that it did get altered quite quickly, and Cash Patel's a moron. Like, he doesn't know what he's doing. So these two things are problematic, but I don't think it's indicative of a cover-up. I think it's indicative of them going, oh my God, let's alter this quickly. I mean, you could also get the thing as well, if they just got rid of the grass bit as well. The immediate thing that went to my mind was murderabilia, and people going there like, here's a bit of grass, watered with the blood of Charlie Kirk. That sort of shit. Like, you're going to get people going there and posing and stuff like that. So potentially, people do daft shit. Like, fucking hell. Like, people, even people's graves aren't like safe. Gigi Allen's grave, like, the amount of piss they've had to clean off of that is ridiculous. But that's another story. So, can you remember when he was talking about how military planes were doing weird plane stuff?
Yeah, what was that?
Well, this is a theory that Candace Owens has come up with. And when I say theory...
Stop. I don't care.
Candice Owens, and it's not entirely clear how this entire this sort of tracks together, because she initially blamed Israel, then she's blamed members of Turning Point USA, she's also blamed elements of the American government, and then she's basically blamed everybody and all of those people and said that they're doing it for Israel. But she'd been looking at the plane, you know, ins and outs and stuff like that. And she alleged, by looking at records at airports, that there might have been surveillance by the Egyptian military, because she alleges that 2 Egyptian air forces, tail numbers SU-BTTT and SU-BND, were used to track Charlie Kirk and his wife for the last 3 years. Because she shows that flight data shows that these planes overlapped with Erica Kirk's location 73 times in the past 3 years. And on the day that Kirk was shot, right, both of these planes were at this airport quite close. She claims that one of the planes was powered on only minutes after the murder, which she interprets to be maybe an escape plot, maybe a signal. I don't know what sort of signal you would require that would get you to start the engine of an airplane. It's a bit like those, you know, like when they light the fires in Lord of the Rings, and then they, you know, light the pyres. Maybe it's a bit like that, like, but just with starting of airplane engines. But also during this time, they illegally turned off their transponders. So we don't know where they were for a short time. I mean, we know where they say they were going to go, and that's where they arrived. But for a short period whilst they're in the air, we don't know where they were. Yeah, isn't it? But it's more than that, because the theory also claims that 4 rental cars were assigned to unidentified passengers from these Egyptian aircraft at the airport. Okay. That's it.
Just waiting for the next bit.
No, that's it. That's it. She just spotted that whilst these planes were landed in Utah, or Provo, I believe is the airport, that the occupants of them hired hire cars, which is very suspicious. So anyway, when she says, right, okay, that that these planes overlapped, basically what she means is that they were at certain places whilst Erica Kirk and or Charlie Kirk were in that city, okay, during the same time, which is suspicious, isn't it? No, it's not suspicious, is it? It's not suspicious at all. It's what you'd call a coincidence, right? Also, and we will go into this on in slightly more detail, because we're going to do a whole thing about Candice Owens and her Bridget Macron and her losing her mind about Charlie Kirk as we go forward with this series. But essentially, she got the times wrong. She didn't realize that the times that these airports, that these planes were at certain airports, were a different time zone to the one that she was in. So I've seen an analysis of it, and it basically says that for 66% of the claims of overlap, she was wrong, and the planes were nowhere near Charlie Kirk. And for the rest of them, it's like, well, yeah, this is where they live relatively near to an air, or they live in an airport. They live in a city where there's an airport. Like, we all live relatively close to a fucking airport. And you know what goes regularly in and out of airports? Airplanes. often using the same like places time and time again, because it's just one of these things in, say, like, you know, the transport and logistics industry. They tend to favor predictability as opposed to landing at fucking random places, particularly, you know, if you're going to the same place. So it's not really that big of a deal at all, to be quite honest. Anyway, the authorities have charged 22-year-old Charlie Kirk with aggravated murder, stating he acted alone due to personal grievance against Charlie Kirk's views. And if you want to know more about it, listen to our Who Killed Charlie Kirk Vulture Wars series. Erica Kirk, Kirk's widow, has publicly urged commentators to stop fueling these theories, calling them wild claims, and stating that she has seen evidence compiled by law enforcement. Investigative reports and some officials noted that perceived gaps in flight tracking data. Oh yeah, sorry, that was it. When the planes had turned off their transponders. Do you know what it was? They were flying through mountain ranges where the radar doesn't pick them up. They didn't turn off their transponders at all. Like it was just nothing. Now, what about the donors? Okay, I mean, was he angry with his Jewish donors? Was he saying that people were going to kill him? Had he double-crossed Bibi Netanyahu? Well, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency has a story. Jewish donors playing to all stereotypes, Charlie Kirk wrote in leaked text messages before his murder. In the days before his murder, Charlie Kirk was frustrated, and he wasn't hiding it from his friends. The conservative influencer complained in a WhatsApp group that his Jewish donors were playing into all the stereotypes and said that they were pushing him to leave the pro-Israel cause. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, Kirk wrote in the group WhatsApp conversation, which included Jewish associates. Just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker, Kirk wrote, adding, I'm thinking of inviting Candice. Another member of the thread, whose identity has not been revealed, responded, please don't invite Candice. So what this is that basically, because Tucker Carlson, as we said in the last episode, has becoming increasingly more anti-Semitic to pander to an audience of right-wing morons on the internet, even going so far as to win anti-Semite of the year. He keeps getting sort of speaking at Turning Point USA events, and certain Jewish people are getting cross with this because there's only so many times you can call them Christ killers and things like that before they start to take notice. So the text message don't mention any donors, but the New York Times reported earlier this month that Robert Shulman, a tech mogul and supporter of pro-Israel causes, grew angry at Kirk and cancelled the $2 million donation to Turning Point over Carlson's participation at a TPUSA event. So the texts were first revealed this week by Candice Owens. Their authenticity was later confirmed by Andrew Colvert, who's the man who said that he had the superhuman spine. At least one pro-Israel Jewish associate of Kirk's, Newsweek's opinion editor Josh Hammer, has confirmed that he was also on the text thread. Candice Owens, who claims that the texts were sent 48 hours before Kirk's murder and that their recipients included a rabbi, sought to paint the text as evidence that Kirk had recently made powerful enemies in the pro-Israel sphere. On Twitter, she's insinuated that Hammer may have had foreknowledge of Kirk's murder. That's the chap from Newsweek. Andrew Colvert, who she's also accused of being involved in Charlie Kirk's murder, was more sanguine with what they revealed. I actually am really excited that the truth is out there, Colvert said on the show, adding that Kirk's texts were consistent with public frustrations he voiced many times about the pro-Israel movement. What is the truth about the way Charlie Kirk felt about Israel? Well, it's complicated and it's nuanced, and it was a wrestle that was going on for months. Charlie was wonderfully defiant. He was wonderfully independent, and he believed in the freedom of speech. And he felt like he deserved, in the freedom of speech he felt he deserved. And as a friend of Israel over many years, the right to speak out and to also have criticisms. Colvert noted that Kirk tended to strike a more moderate tone in public on the subject of Israel than the way he came across in the text, whilst also showing past interviews in which Kirk had expressed frustration that some pro-Israel circles were portraying him as an anti-Semite. Prior to his death, Kirk had sent a letter to Netanyahu warning him that Israel was losing support even in conservative circles. Hammer addressing the text rose on the social network Twitter. Kirk was blowing off steam in a private group chat setting. I spoke with Kirk about Israel hours later, and Charlie sought out our advice for how to better communicate the Israel issue on campus so as to be more effective with the younger Generation Z argument. So he did lose a $2 million donor, but it was to do with Tucker Carlson. That was it, and it was the guy from the tech mogul. It wasn't any of the other people. There certainly was no one with, he's got pro-Israel stance, but that's it. So did he get messages saying that they're going to kill me? Well, yes, he did. And Andrew Colvert again is the person that said that he got these messages. Owens claimed that Colvert had informed her of the specific message, but she alleged in a similar text stating the left is going to kill me was sent to a security staff member, Dan Flood. So it's not entirely clear who this text was sent to. Colvert publicly verified the authenticity of other leaked texts from Kirk regarding his internal debates over the pro-Israel movement, but Owens maintained that Colvert specifically disclosed the death threat text to her in private. So Colvert has said that the stuff about the donor is true, but he's not said that the text about being that the left are going to kill me is true at all. However, the situation remains controversial because Erica Kirk initially stated that she found no such text on his phone. However, later in December 2025, she claimed Owens claimed that Erica had since clarified that these messages, the left is going to kill me, were located on Signal and Telegram rather than standard iMessages. But it's not clear whether they exist or in what context they actually were. Also, a figure like Kirk going, "Oh, the left is going to kill me," it's probably not to be taken literally. It's like, of course they are. You're in opposition to them. That's your job. You're an antagonist.
I'm sure he said that a million and one times without thinking, like, seriously. Like, it just, oh, you never believe what I've done. Such and such is going to kill me.
No, they're going to kill me. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's ridiculous. Now, what about this payment from Netanyahu? Well, the allegation is that the commentator Candace Owens, on reports from the Grey Zone, alleged that Netanyahu personally contacted Kirk to offer him a massive financial backing for TPUSA. Owens claimed Kirk was promised a massive financial payout following a direct conversation with Prime Minister intended to secure his continued support for Israel amid his shifting public stance. Now, the rumors are that he was offered as much as $150 million. And sources cited by the Grey Zone claimed that Kirk rejected the offer, viewing it as an attempt to silence his growing skepticism regarding Israel's influence on US politics. And remember, we said that we talked about this one on the Vulture Wars as well, because she accused Bill Ackman of basically being the sort of go-between. He's a billionaire or very, very rich man. He was accused of organizing an intervention where this offer was discussed. Now, there is a problem with this theory put forward by the Grey Zone, and Netanyahu has denied it, but obviously he would deny it. He said it's insane, false, and outrageous, saying that the only time he recently spoke with Kirk was to invite him to visit Israel. There's no evidence to back this up at all. There's absolutely no evidence. The Grey Zone don't offer any evidence. Candace Owens doesn't offer any evidence. There's no receipts. There's no influx of money. They can't pinpoint a donation of that size. It seems to have been completely made up by Candace Owens and the Grey Zone. So there you go. So as we spiral through this, Tucker Carlson obviously wanting to remain up on the important issues of the day and wrestling with things, shall we say, has somebody on the show to discuss stuff. It's Milo Yiannopoulos, or the Greek tossed salad, as we should be calling him from now on. Can you guess? Can you guess what it is that Tucker Carlson and Milo Yiannopoulos obsess about for over 2 hours?
Well, considering the previous episode, he's talking to Nick Fuentes, where they end off there, I'm gonna guess pornography.
Pornography comes into it, but it's essentially about being gay and how being gay is not a real thing, but how you can be turned gay by things. And it starts off.
Okay.
Now, Tucker, obviously, he's a sophisticated man. And what's your favorite comedy of all time? Like, you know, like there's some great Spinal Tap, With Nail and I, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, Happiness.
Well, History of the World Part 1.
There you go. History of
Most
the World
Mel
Part
Brooks
1.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's loads and loads of like absolutely brilliant comedies that you could pick. Don't Be a Menace to South Central, Once Drinking Your Juice in the Hood.
Even Monty Python stuff.
Monty Python, Holy Grail, absolutely. Do you want to have a guess? And you know, and he's privately educated, is Tucker Carlson. So, do you want to guess what Tucker Carlson thinks is, and I quote, the most hilarious thing ever?
Trading Places.
Not Trading Places. There's a black person in that. Birth of a Nation, he thought was funny. No. The funniest thing, the most hilarious thing ever is that thing on the internet where that bigoted guy from the Nigerian news show asks the transsexual woman repeatedly, "Why are you gay?" You know the one.
That's the best thing.
That's the most hilarious thing in the world. Tucker elaborates, and he's laughing. He's laughing already. He says, "What?" And he does the voice. He does the accent. "Why are you gay?" It's the funniest thing that's ever been on the internet. But why is it funny? And why does everyone find it funny? Left, right, straight, gay? Well, it's because it's kind of the key question. And it's kind of the question that no one in the United States is allowed to ask. And what do you think about that? Do you think that A, it's the funniest thing ever? Do you think that it's universally thought to be the funniest thing ever? And do you think that it's because it's just one of those crazy things that no one is allowed to ask in America?
No, and no.
It's fucking ridiculous, isn't it? Like, okay, this is a question. Right, this is a question that has and is still pondered to this day. What is sexuality? Is sexuality fixed? Is it inherited? Does it occur in nature? Yes, it does, by the way. Absolutely does. So bearing in mind that this is not allowed to be asked, I thought, let's just Google, are people born gay? Or why are you gay? And PBS comes up immediately. There's no gay gene, but there's also no straight gene. Sexuality cannot be pinned down by biology, psychology, etc., etc. The second is the National Institute of Health. I was born this way. The third is the Scientific American. Massive study finds no single genetic cause of same-sex attraction. Planned Parenthood, various essays about what causes sexual orientation. Research shows that sexual orientation is likely caused partly by biological factors that start before birth. people don't decide who they're attracted to, etc., etc. So there's an argument that the right wing is using that's really, really clever. And they don't think that gay people are legitimate. And it doesn't take a genius to see where this goes, because this is also tied into the concept of trans people, that there's no such thing as trans people, that they're all just essentially cosplaying or trying it on, or it's the result of some sort of trauma. And the argument goes like this. Can you show me the gene that makes people gay? And they don't mean like skinny fit, they mean like genetic. So, and this is where they go, now you're fucked, because we haven't identified a gene that makes you gay. There is no gay gene. I mean, there's no straight gene either. Like, and so there's another factor into this as well, because the concept has always been, or the phrase born this way has been used a lot, because that is a way to well, but essentially because that was what was believed for a long time. Now it transpires that it might not be as simple as that people are looking into this, and but they're trying to make it that basically, because it's not as straightforward as we can identify that all people are born gay, that essentially they can argue that homosexuality is learned behavior, and this works out brilliantly for everyone, because the closeted people on the right can go, oh bloody hell, I've just picked up a bad habit, like a faulty golf swing or something like that, that through training can be manipulated back into good form, so to speak, and I can stop accidentally having sex with all those guys. But also, when they claim it's a habit, not an identity, they can persecute homosexuals. But as I say, this also gives them the excuse for the occasional gay dalliance, because they're not really gay, they were just tricked by society and lust. But they're not gay because that's not a thing. But also, as I say, it means that you can persecute and dehumanize people who identify as gay. Now, my argument to this would be, who the fuck cares? Who gives a shit, right? Tucker, for Christ's sake, just come out, just have this gay experience, have a go. You're clearly desperate to have a try. See if you like it. If you don't do it again. It's really bullshit. They then lie about Uganda. Sorry, it was I think it's a Ugandan rather than Nigerian. That's my mistake. That's because I'm thinking of the bots from Nick Fuentes earlier. But he lies about the laws in Uganda. He said, how's it defined in Uganda? Well, if you read it, and you can because it's online, the Ugandan government defines aggravated homosexuality as gay rape of children, gay rape of the elderly who can't consent, people over 75, gay rape of people who are mentally deficient, and the international transmission of deadly diseases to another person. And this is because you can be put to death or even imprisoned for life for certain laws surrounding homosexuality in Uganda. And Tucker Carlson is trying to say that they've been portrayed as being draconian and Neanderthal and medieval even, and actually they're not. They're there to stop these dangerous gays raping children and pensioners, because apparently that's the thing that happens. Obviously, this is all powerful shite, and he's absolutely lying. In Uganda, just being gay can get you life imprisonment. Promotion of homosexuality, which can mean being friends with a gay person or acknowledging that gay people exist, is punishable by up to 20 years in prison. This criminalizes activities that encourage or normalize homosexuality, including providing financial or other support to pro-LGBT plus organizations. Same-sex marriage is explicitly prohibited, and anybody involved in a marriage ceremony could receive 10 years or more in prison. So for some reason, Tucker Carlson is trying to pretend that these horrific laws in which are designed to persecute gay people and anybody who has the temerity to be friends with a gay person or think that gay people are legitimate to exist, is incorrect, and they're just being demonized. And he's going to tie this in with Christianity, obviously, because the man's a prick. He then says that Pete Buttigieg, the senator from America who's openly gay, he says, and see if you can spot the flaw in his logic. He says that Pete Buttigieg, he proves scientifically, that homosexuality is a choice, because before he came out as a gay man, he'd had a girlfriend.
Oh, shocker. What an idiot.
It's very silly, isn't it? Very, very, very silly. Then Milo comes out, no pun intended. And immediately we can see that there's something very, very wrong. And I don't just mean that, the evident thing that's very, very wrong, that Milo Yiannopoulos and Tucker Carlson are on the screen rather than being lowered very slowly into a meat grinder. There's something wrong with Milo's eye. Like, it's I don't mean to be cruel, but he's got what could be described as a pontoon eye. It doesn't know whether to stick, it doesn't know whether to twist. It's all over the fucking place. And I was reminded by something that he put out on Twitter in October. I'm 41 and the doctor thinks I have a brain tumor. I've been passing out a lot lately. Monstrous headaches. My vision is unpredictably bad. I'm not hungry. I'm always hungry. Tingly fingers, the works. And of course, I've been ignoring these symptoms for months, or is it years? That must be a good sign, I tell him. Surely I must be dead by now. And he just looks at me. So I've had an MRI and there's a dark spot, black as sin, but the technician wasn't absolutely sure. And my doctor isn't an oncologist, though his wife is. Something is in there that shouldn't be. Something is not right. So I'm having another one and seeing a specialist in a few days. It's not 100%. It might not be cancer. My gut says it will be fine. He wouldn't have spared me from God wouldn't have spared me from the AIDS just to take me out like this. Whatever it is, I suddenly regret saying I'm ready to be with Jesus so many times over the past couple of years. God is like that. One of his favorite punishments is to give you what you ask for. And so that's horrible, obviously, if that's the case. What's interesting is that basically he keeps putting on Twitter that he's passing out and making excuses to not go to the doctor. Now, it could be that he just doesn't want to find out the truth. It could be that this is all performative and he's lying. But I was reminded of what Nick Fuentes said, that Milo is essentially millions of dollars in debt and doesn't have a working credit card. And reminded of the very cruel circumstance of American healthcare that sometimes leaves people in desperate need of some sort of consultation and simply not being able to foot the bill. And it could well be that, to be quite honest. But there's also something else that I didn't know about Milo that might be an explanation for this. And it's also the reason that he usually wears sunglasses. Did you know that Milo is technically blind?
What? No.
Yeah. Milo Yiannopoulos is legally blind. I know. I'm astonished. He's got a condition called macular degeneration and severe myopia. And he's referenced this apparently many times in the past. And it's why he often wears dark glasses during interviews. And it's the reason that he sometimes appears cross-eyed or avoids eye contact. And so anyway, but anyway, so, and this interview is horrific because Tucker is really probing. Like, Tucker, for some reason, really wants to get to the crux of what makes people gay. And therefore, if there's some sort of like formula, is there any way to reverse this for reasons? But Milo has decided that he is the most hilarious person on the planet and wants to be a complete bitch throughout the whole thing and tell jokes. And it doesn't work. None of the jokes land. The whole thing's appalling. Anyway, so Tucker asks, so let me ask Milo, are you gay? Were you gay? What is gay? And what do you think Milo's answer might be?
I'm just laughing at it. What is gay?
What is gay? Come on,
He, like,
reassure me.
Like the questions we all have. Who are we? Why am I here?
Well, that's it. I mean, Tucker Carlson saying, you know, what is gay is essentially him questioning, who am I? Why am I here? So, you know, please reassure me, Milo. Please tell me that this is something that you can work through, is what I took from it. So what do you think Milo's response was? He has ideas about homosexuality. He says, and I quote, nobody's gay.
Oh, okay.
Nobody's gay. After that clip, which, and Milo agrees, is the best thing on the internet. And I'm starting to think that these right-wingers don't fully understand comedy, if I'm brutally honest. He changes the question, the interrogative, to a declarative, and he says, why are you gay? And she starts, you know, it starts talking, and he says, you are gay. It becomes a statement, and this is where he goes, and this is where he loses me, because Tucker, nobody is gay. We've been encouraged to think of this. It's an icky subject, like straight men don't want to think about it. Now, later, Milo says, in almost every case, and certainly in every male case, it is a trauma response. It is not a sexuality. It is not a part of what you are, or who you are, or a component of your personality or a function. It's a set of behaviors that emerges in people with a number of very easily identifiable common etiologies. One of them is, well, for instance, among Black and Jewish Americans, they report statistically significantly higher rates of homosexuality. Why could that be? So why do you think, in Milo's philosophy, why Black and Jewish Americans have a higher statistical rate of homosexuality, which I don't think they do, but whatever. Why does Milo think this?
Because it's a conspiracy to bring them down or something.
Sort of. He says
depopulate them through HIV.
Well, that'd actually have at least, like, you know, some sort of, like, maybe this, like, an idea behind that. He's a little bit a bit simpler than that. He says it's overbearing mums and absent dads. Or in the Jewish case, nebbish fathers. And, you know, like my Jewish friends, I always call their marriages, they're like lion taming, you know, where you have a sort of nebbish, scholarly, bookish dad and a larger than life mom who, you know, one day decides she's going to be a rabbi. But, you know, that, or in the Black community, of course, it's the fatherlessness. And it's why if we're born that way, if you don't have some better explanation, could it be the case that there are more gays among Black and Jewish populations? Well, something's going on here. Why are we getting more trans and more gays and then less gays? Why, says Tucker? Because this is in fact a symptom. In fact, this is a product of something. It's a result of something. And Tucker says, well, that was Freud's position, which was kind of conventional wisdom for the better part of 100 years. It's like, are you fucking serious? Yeah, that was the foundation. That's like saying, well, they used leeches in the past, and they used that for hundreds of years. They used bloodletting. They let barbers cut people's legs off. But now everything's fucking woke, isn't it? And, you know, you can't do anything. And that was his response to the environment, and particularly to the relationship with the mother that a young boy has a relationship with his father. I mean, this was like, people just assumed that was true when I was a kid. They weren't gay haters or homophobes. That was a state of knowledge of the subject. that, you know, gay people were mentally ill and should be treated not as human beings, but as someone with a disease inside them that need to be purged in the same way that you would lance a boil. And that wasn't homophobic, Brent. They weren't gay haters. That was just, you know, that was just their state of knowledge on the subject. Anyway, so Milo attempts to explain his gay phase, and this is where he does the sort of born this way, and he manages to do it in the gayest way possible. He says, so they start off with this, you know, you were born this way. Oh, honey, you were born this way, honey. You're beautiful, whatever you are. And I'm like, no, you're like that because you got raped by a priest, or you're like that because your mother was overbearing and your dad wasn't around, or you're like that just because you failed. And he further attempts to explain his gayness by suggesting that gayness it's not like something that you like, right? It's not something that you want. It's not something that you're sort of attracted to. It's more like an addiction, which actually is one of those things that you like and are attracted to and want to do. But never mind. Anyway, he says to Tucker, have you ever been addicted to anything? And Tucker says, oh yeah. And he looks genuinely excited, like, please tell me you've got a couple of lines in your wallet, Milo, please. And Milo goes, yeah. And he goes, big time. And he looks really desperate, like, come on, let's get some rails on the go, for fuck's sake. But no, he lets him down. He says, so, you know, there's that moment when your mind is flooded and it's all that you can think about. And Tucker Carlson says yes in a way that lets me know that at that moment, his mind is absolutely flooded with the idea of spending a afternoon doing cocaine and whatever takes their fancy with Milo Yiannopoulos. Anyway, Milo says it's all that you can. You've got to get it out, because if you don't do a line or have a smoke or do something, if you don't get it out, it's just going to be all that you could think about for the rest of the day, and it's just driving you crazy because it floods your mind. Yeah, and I've been addicted to one or two little things, and I realized that sex works in the same way. So what Milo's saying is that basically he's addicted to homosexuality in as much as he can't stop thinking about homosexual sex with men. He's not gay, though, because nobody's gay, because it's not a thing. It's all down to the trauma of his overbearing mother. And then he says, Tucker says, I believe that. Because of course he does. And Milo says, so I realized that when I was in a plane and I'm sitting down, you know, and I'm sitting down on a plane, I'm like, yeah, gin and tonic, girl. And then, you know, a basket player, well, not a basketball player because they're all gay nerds, but like a football player or something would sit next to me and it would take hold of me. And there were times when I'd be on a plane and I'd have to get up and go to the bathroom and, like, you know, and Tucker Carlson says, yeah. And I don't know whether he says yeah as in he's saying yes, I know, because I've experienced the exact same thing, or whether he's just being polite and trying to drive on the conversation. But anyway, so Milo says, because I had to get rid of it because it was taking a hold of my mind. So that's Milo Yiannopoulos, who's not gay, because that's not a thing, saying that he'd be so attracted to, like, an athlete that he'd see on a plane, he wouldn't be able to contain himself and he'd have to go to the toilet and masturbate furiously in order to get the gay thoughts out. And Tucker Carlson says, it sounds like a demon. And it's at that point that I remember that Tucker Carlson slept with a demon. But I don't think that's where he's going with that. And he says, yeah, because that's what it is. And I joke and I say it's Gorgoroth, the semen demon. You know, he comes out of the way. He doesn't visit me very often, you know, but it's totally real. And you can tell that he really expected to get a big laugh from Gorgoroth, the semen demon. Gorgoroth is actually a black metal band from Norway. They're named after a particular orc from Lord of the Rings. So just in case anyone was like, where have I heard the name of that semen demon? It's black metal. Anyway, I mean, that stuff, it's real, says Tucker. And Milo says, yes, but I realize that, so I don't do cocaine anymore. And Tucker goes, but as if he's starting to say, like, but I was really convinced that you had a couple of grams in your pocket. What the fuck, Milo? You're really starting to get on my tits now. And Milo says, you know, it'd be a shock to people, but I used to be a bit of a cokehead, you know. When I was like, that rush of dopamine, the rituals associated with it as well, you know, I was like, oh my God, that's how I feel about sex. And that can't be right. It just can't be right. And Tucker Carlson says, it's literally, and I'm not describing my gay sex, but that is literally a perversion and it's a demon. And it's like, what do you mean you're gay sex? What? Anyway, later still, Tucker says, yeah, well, there does seem to be some connection, but it does, you know, the incidence of closeted homosexuality on the right is overwhelming. It's like way above what you would imagine is statistically probable. You know, just poking and prodding, just seeing if anyone else is gay, because he's not, but just to find out if anyone else is. So Milo says, 3 straight guys on the right is like Alex, you, and I have a floating wild card just in case I forgot anyone, you know. Who else is there? I mean, maybe they're me, maybe they're me telling, but who else is in there? What is that? I just don't understand, says Tucker. And it says, and Milo says, there's such a long relationship, a long happy marriage between conservative politics and homosexuality. And it's easy to joke about it and say, oh, it's all the bells and the smells of the frocks of the religious dimension to it all, or it's the pomp and the circumstance of power, or it's, and then Tucker butts in and says, well, the New Testament is really tough on homosexuality, so I don't see it as, it's certainly not a Christian thing. And Milo says, no, it's not a Christian thing. But of course, it's easy to understand with the sort of obscene, obese heresies of the type that obtain in this country. I mean, in a country where the prosperity gospel can thrive. And so he's trying to do a joke there. And Tucker just goes, you're right, because he's not really listening. He's just thinking about closeted homosexuals. Milo thinks that it's all about that all gay interactions, that all homosexual relationships are a power thing. And he says it's about powerless people because gays are feminine, wanting to feel powerful over, you know, big, great butch omies of the heterosexual kind. And Tucker agrees. He says that's what it's all about. That's totally what it's about. He also attempts to have a go at John McCain's daughter, but he ends up, again, really, really telling on himself. He goes, yeah, bomb Iran. What's gayer? I'm not saying that he was a practicing homosexual physically, but is there anything gayer than John McCain's bloodlust, seen through this, or his proteges, seen through this prison? I mean, he's even got the fat friend. It's his daughter, you know, like even Brent, the fat best friend, you know, like, is there a more ostentatious, like, fag hag in America than Meghan McCain? You know, she hates herself. She's fat. She's crazy. She's every man's dream, you know. She can't dress, you know. And, like, what I like about that is at the end, like, he can't help but telling on himself by basically just, she's fat, she's crazy, she's every man's dream. She can't dress, you know. Oh, my, no. And Tucker goes, oh, why is that every gay man's dream? And he said, and this is why is it every gay man's dream to have a fat best friend? Because they want to visit upon their female friends the cruelty that they wish they could perform on their mothers. Now, so just to clarify, Milo, who's not gay, but is criticizing the way that Meghan McCain can't dress, says that John McCain was gay because the act of killing people through foreign wars was his way of getting power over people, which is gay. Although you must remember that nobody's gay because it's not a thing. And if you're wondering why Meghan McCain is fat at the minute, it's because she's pregnant. So, you know, he's a class act. But he elaborates on the thing about his mother. He says they want to make their mother feel fat and ugly and ridiculous because that's what their mother did to them. And there was no dad around to protect them. And their mother was just this overbearing, terrible, this sort of Jungian, devouring mother. And then he states that the entire fashion industry is gay guys taking revenge on women by making them look like demons, which is where it all starts to lose its thread because, it's the demons that make people gay, if you remember, because there's no such thing as gay because nobody's gay, specifically not Tucker. Anyway, Milo then goes on to say, I have to be honest with you, I bear some responsibility for this because it was me 10 years ago mainstreaming homosexuality into the Republican Party. It's the great regret of my life, more than anything I've done to my own soul, which is a lot. It's the great regret of my life because it has given rise to horrors I never imagined. Lenin said, all revolutionaries come to hate their children, while the gay horrors that I've given birth to, Lady Marga, Nick Fuentes, they keep me up at night. They all keep me up at night. And then Milo has receipts to back up these ideas. He said, and I quote, Queen Victoria didn't believe that this was sex or that two women would do that with one another, and she refused to accept that women even did that, very wisely realizing that lesbianism wasn't real, and so lesbianism wasn't illegal in Britain for a long time when male homosexuality was. And so what he's saying there is because Queen Victoria refused to acknowledge that lesbianism was a thing, that proves that lesbianism isn't a thing, which in turn proves that homosexuality is also not a thing. And then he goes on to explain his concerns. But if you think about it like this, the sassy, vindictive, catty cruelty of the homosexual, imagine what that would be like if you gave him a nuclear button, right? And that reminds me of, do you ever seen the Day-to-Day, or is it Brass Eye sketch about the gay man in the Navy? And says, why are you not allowed to have gay people in the Navy? He says, gay people, they attract enemy radar, they attract sharks, they nudge people while shooting, they insist on being placed at the captain's table. You can't have a gay man on a boat. Can you imagine going to bed at night and waking up and thinking, oh God, will everyone be dead tomorrow? You just simply can't run a boat like that. And that is about as sensible as what my own opposite has said there. You can't have gay people in charge of the nuclear button because they're sassy, vindictive, catty, and cruel. But anyway, Milo, obviously because gayness isn't a thing, is converting himself. He's actively putting himself through gay conversion therapy, although he hasn't got any money, so he's sort of doing it himself DIY. I stumbled upon a crude version of what the enlightened, they don't call it conversion therapy anymore, they call it reintegrative therapy, because it's reintegrating those shards and those broken bits, memory that lead to the wrong output. We could talk in detail if you want, but I stumbled upon a crude version of that. Right, so can you guess what Milo does? Every time he has what he deems as a gay thought, in order to reintegrate these shards of trauma back into his true self, do you know what he does every time he has a thought that he deems as gay?
Yes.
Well, no, not that. He stopped doing all that. Right?
No, he flagellates himself.
Yeah, but do you know how specifically he does that?
Doesn't he cut his inner thigh or something like that? Is that right?
He's pouring hot oil on his inner thighs.
That's it.
Fucking nuts.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I was trying to stop myself from doing this,
Da Vinci Code too many times.
Fucking in it. Yeah, absolutely. I was using hot oil on my thighs. I was doing things that hurt. I was trying to rewire my brain. And he recommends a man called Joseph Nicolosi. And says that he's been basically like reading up on him. He says he's a fabulous person and that was persecuted by the government. So who's Joseph Nicolosi? Joseph Nicolosi was an American clinical psychologist who advocated and practiced reparative therapy, which is a form of pseudoscientific treatment of conversion therapy. And he claimed he could help people overcome or mitigate their homosexual desires and replace them with heterosexual ones. Nicolosi proposed that homosexuality is often the product of a condition he described as gender identity deficit caused by alienation from and perceived rejection by formative individuals of the subject's gender, which interrupts normal masculine or feminative identity processes. So, absent fathers, feminine fathers, overbearing mothers. In 2009, the Royal College of Psychiatrists criticised Nicolosi's appearance at a conference in London, saying that there is no sound scientific evidence that sexual orientation can be changed. And furthermore, so-called treatments of homosexuality create a setting in which prejudice and discrimination can flourish. In 2012, California passed a law that banned the provision of conversion therapy to minors, including some of Nicolosi's existing patients. So he was using conversion therapy on children under the age of 18. Which includes pain, like hot oil on the inner thighs. Nicolosi was named as a plaintiff in a lawsuit challenging the law on constitutional grounds, but the law effectively barring Nicolosi's clinic from taking patients under the age of 18 was subsequently upheld. In 2013, Nicolosi appeared on Stephen Fry's television documentary, Stephen Fry Out There, which examined different attitudes to homosexuality. He informed Fry that 60% of our clients are teenagers. Parents call up in a panic because they found out their son is looking at gay porn. And of course, we have to get him into therapy. After this segment, Fry says that for all his talk of success, Nicolosi is unable to find a single one of his ex-gays to talk to us. Apparently, in this program, Fry did speak with a man called Daniel Gonzalez, who was a former client of Nicolosi's, who says that he who did not have success in changing his sexual orientation and condemns the therapy. So it didn't work on him. In 2017, psychology professor Warren Throckmorton said that Nicolosi had earlier been offered the chance to assess the viability of his therapy by J. Michael Bailey, a professor of psychology best known for his sexual orientation research. Bailey informed Nicolosi that he could bring his patients to his lab at Northwestern University to test their automatic responses to erotic cues, i.e. men versus women. Throckmorton wrote that Nicolosi never took him up on the offer and that Bailey confirmed that the offer was still open. Bailey told Throckmorton that pre or even mid-treatment brain scans compared with post-treatment scans would help to offset the lack of control group. In a prominent 2016 academic review, Bailey also critiqued Nicolosi's claims of success, noting that the earlier research by Kurt Freund found that men's claims of sexual orientation were not supported by phallometric assessments, which measure penile blood flow in response to imagery. Have you ever seen a film called Death Row Game Show? It's very obscure.
No.
It's really, really obscure 80s film. In it, basically, like there's deadly games, and they have a thing. If he gets an erection whilst this woman dances in front of him, he dies. And the big gag in it is that this woman fails to get him aroused, and he walks off, and a sexy male model walks on, and he immediately is electrocuted. But essentially, without the electrocution and the game show aspect of it, that's quite similar to what these experiments were doing. And they found that essentially, Bailey notes that Conrad and Wintz found that the physiological arousal measurements did not support the positive reports of men who had participated in sexual reorientation therapy. They were still attracted to and aroused by men. Now, also, Tucker, so this was it. That was essentially the entire thing. It was embarrassing. It was essentially Milo telling lots of stories about how he hated his mom, was scared of his dad, and felt that his stepfather was too much of a wimp. And that he used to have to masturbate on planes whenever he saw a hot guy. And now, as I say, tortures himself when he feels that he deserves to be punished for having gay thoughts. That was the long and short of the interview. It was pretty grim and tragic all round, to be quite honest. But after the interview, Tucker had thoughts that were sort of connected with the things that were discussed in this particular interview, but in regards to the ongoing military attack in Venezuela. Can you guess how Tucker managed to connect this interview with Milo and his recent sort of thoughts about stuff to the military incursion by the United States of America in Venezuela?
Not a fucking clue.
Well, he's concerned, you see. Like, he's concerned, not that basically, like, this is, international piracy, essentially, not that innocent people have died, not that, sanctions are have been overthrowing Venezuela for years on behalf of billionaires. Nothing like that. That would be too simplistic. Conservative talk show host Tucker Carlson has made several bizarre claims amid US operations in Venezuela. Carlson, who was formerly with Fox News, claimed that his belief was that the US action might have been due to Nicolas Maduro's opposition to gay marriage. And Carlson further claimed that the US military action is solely aimed at introducing gay marriage to Venezuela.
What the fuck, man? What timeline are we in?
It's fucking nuts, isn't it? This is like, yeah, how the mighty have fallen.